All right, guys, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs preview here. We're going to dig through the roster, dig through the coaching staff, dig through the schedule, all that fun stuff we have been doing. And got an interesting team here as always. Went to the Super Bowl last year. It was their third Super Bowl in the row. Though they did not win the last one, Eagles beat them pretty heavy. And 3 Super Bowl appearances in a row. Could only get the 2 home, but again, another Super Bowl appearance there, 3 in a row. And they're going to try and go back there today. Or we're going to talk about their journey back there today if they can get there. And so why don't we go ahead and jump into it. We'll start with the coaching staff. Andy Reid, who's the best coach in the league, has been the best coach in the league for a pretty long time at this point, calls all the plays, does all the other stuff. He does have his weaknesses and stuff. Some of the play calling on 3rd and 4th and short is pretty awful because they won't sneak with Mahomes after he got hurt on his sneak before, so they just don't sneak, and they do a lot of bad reverse stuff and things like that. And then they are kind of conservative, but, they're getting better, kind of like everybody else is around the league. And then defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, who's been here a long time as well, who's been an excellent defensive coordinator for ages and ages. You remember, as a Giants fan, I remember him with us and doing great things with our defense, and he's been doing great things with this one as well. So he's an excellent coordinator, one of the few teams that does well every year and doesn't lose any coordinators. Spagnuolo's still here. Obviously, you're not going to lose Reid. He's the head coach, but just a really good staff, and part of the reason they're so good most of the time. Let's jump into the roster. Quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and then the backup is Gardner Minshew. Minshew's a fine backup. Minshew's not a starter in this league, but as a backup, he can come in and do a job if he has to here and there. I don't particularly love Gardner Minshew if you're playing 16 games, as we said, but, Mahomes has a high ankle sprain and misses 3 games. You can kind of get by with Gardner Minshew if you need be. But Mahomes, still the best quarterback in the league to me, still does all the right things. He's the best scrambler in the league. Not the best runner, but the best scrambler. So difficult to sack most of the time. Still does all the important QB stuff really well. The 2-minute drill, before halftime, at the end of game, after halftime. Those drives are also good. Talked about the scrambling, still an accurate passer, all that fun stuff. And again, he's working like top 7, 8 in terms of just EPA, all that stuff as always. And even if that took a dip, it's on probably the worst offense of anybody floating around him. Really bad running back room for the most part last year. After Rashee Rice got hurt last year, definitely one of the worst wide receiver rooms. The offensive line was about average at best, so still not working with a ton here like he's used to having. And again, we'll talk about the rest of it there, but Mahomes still the number 1 quarterback to me. Let's jump on into the running back room. This one I have all the way kind of at the bottom there, number 31 in the league. There aren't too, the Cowboys are worse than this, I guess, is the only one I have worse than this. Elijah Mitchell comes in. I think he's pretty decent. Not really healthy very often. He's okay. We'll see. Isaiah Pacheco, the starter here. An interesting run style. Decent enough back. Not super explosive or anything like that. Just an okay back. And then Kareem Hunt, who is not a good back. I know, he's always been that guy. Like in Cleveland, he was always that guy. It was like, man, you give him more touches. And he moved out from there, and he's moved on a couple times, and then was out of the league, back in, and he did an okay-ish before, but we're talking like 40s and expected yards, and like in terms of just like ranking in the NFL, he's down there. He's his advanced stuff is not very good, and not someone I would personally want getting a ton of touches here, but also it's just not a good running back room. So he may get a decent amount of touches, and that may just be that, and it'll just be super inefficient running behind a line that we'll talk about in a bit, but that's not fantastic. So they could look even worse running the football this year. But yeah, not a running back room I particularly love. P. Ryan at least did something on third down. You can throw him the football and stuff like that. There's not a ton of that here. So we'll see. But yeah, not in love with the running back room. Wide receiver room. I like this one a little bit more. Rashee Rice, again, coming off his ACL. We'll see. He was one of the better slot receivers last year in all of football. Was playing really, really well before his injury. He probably gets his suspension. I'm not sure what or when that comes or what that length of suspension looks like. I've heard 6 games. I've heard 8 games. I've heard 4 games. There's a lot of things floating around that, so we'll see exactly what happens. My assumption is he gets suspended this year at some stage or before the season even starts as well, which is why I haven't touched any Chiefs stuff over the first couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. He's a really, really big part of this offense. And again, the best wide receiver here by margin. Then you get Xavier Worthy, who had a decent-ish first year. It's tougher to separate, obviously, in the NFL, but he started to pick it up second half of last year. The first half was a little bit slow. Second half definitely picked it up. Obviously, Rashee Rice went out, and he became more of a focal point. But getting him tons of targets and reps and all that fun stuff definitely helps going into this year. And Rashee Rice, as we said, will be the guy when he's healthy or when he's on the field, and Worthy will be going up against some 2s and some 3s and things like that. So it should generally help the offense that Worthy got all those touches and things of that nature last year. Hollywood Brown missed a lot of last year with an injury, missed like 15 games, missed like a good chunk of the season there. Came back, and in the playoffs he was okay. Nothing spectacular. Again, he's going to be the 3 here. But as long as he's healthy, which is a big if, he's missed a variety of different things with a variety of different games with a couple of different things. One, that heel still bugs him, and that's bugged him for a while now. So we'll see in terms of health. But if he's healthy, if all 3 are healthy, it's a pretty good receiver room, genuinely. You got Juju Smith-Schuster still here. Sky Moore, who I don't know when we're going to give up on Sky Moore. Jalen Royals, they draft. So they're hoping that, you get something there. Everybody's healthy on the field. But again, if everyone's healthy on the field, it's a pretty gigantic step up from what they were doing at wide receiver last year. Like from weeks 7 to 14, it was pretty tough. But again, should be a giant step up when they're all on the field. We'll see how often that happens this year with a variety of different injury concerns and suspension concerns. But we'll see. Again, good room. Tight end, Travis Kelce, still going at it. I was going to say still growing strong, but not as much anymore. He's still a good mover. He can still make a couple of good turns and shifts at the top of routes and things like that. He strikes me as someone who's getting ready to go into that Gronk mode where he doesn't play all year and then kind of just pops out of retirement and you come in for the playoff run and go about it that way. It's kind of what that feels like. They kind of, early in the season last year, they were kind of keeping him under wraps, under bubble wrap type stuff. And I imagine that's just kind of what you want to do, get to the playoffs with him healthy. And that's probably the plan again this year, I would think. So not expecting 1,500 yards out of Travis Kelce type stuff, but should be useful. And then Noah Gray, who's a pretty decent too. So still a good room when everybody's on the field, everybody's rolling. But there are a few concerns there with Travis Kelce. Offensive line. This is an interesting group. It was not so great last year. It was like a middle of the pack, 16, 17, 18th ranked offensive line last year. And there are a couple of changes. Tooney's gone. The left tackle's gone. And you bring in Josh Simmons, who you get in the draft. He's going to play left tackle, which a rookie at left tackle for, again, offensive line last year wasn't that good, and now we're slotting a rookie in at left tackle could could be problematic, could be very good, obviously. Suamatea at left guard comes in for Tooney, which is a step back, as we said. So the left side of the line could potentially be problematic. Again, we could be very good. But Tooney at left guard was one of the best in the league. And left tackle wasn't great, but again, it wasn't a rookie, so we got some stuff to look at there. Creed Humphrey, probably the best center in the league, or one of them at least. Very, very good. Trey Smith was pretty good last year. Nothing super spectacular. In the pass block game, run block was very good. Top 6 for interior O-line. Run blocking, winning his run blocking reps, so those are always nice. And then you got Juwan Taylor, who's coming off a bit of an injury. We'll see what that looks like when he comes back. He has his pre-snap penalty problems. I think it's 3rd worst in the NFL in terms of penalty yardage for tackles, so that's not fun. And he has that funky thing where he starts quick and everyone's like, is he starting quick? Sometimes the refs see it, sometimes they don't, that type of stuff. So, yeah, I can't rate the offensive line better than it was last year, which could potentially be a bit of an issue. Last year, Chiefs were the worst team in the NFL in allowing quick pressure on standard dropbacks, just regular dropback passes. 33% of the time you're getting quick pressure, which normally means under 2.5 seconds they're getting to the quarterback, or getting a pressure on the quarterback at least. And as I said, 33% of the time they're letting that up on standard pass downs, which is truly bad. It's definitely the worst in the NFL, and worse by a few percent. I believe the next team was at 30%. So it was a bad O-line last year, and there are problems here on the left side in particular. So as we said, we were talking about it like a Rashee Rice injury or his suspension, and like a Hollywood Brown injury or something like that, and this offense is just roster-wise worse than it was last year. There's room to grow, as I said, if everybody's healthy. If everybody's healthy, the pass game should be a little bit better. If you can get the left side of the offensive line playing pretty decent, the offense should be better, but there's also a tail to the bad here where the left side is just a turnstile again. Where Rashee Rice is suspended for 8 games, Hollywood Brown's hurt, and we're back to what they were last year, except in a pretty worse version. So there's a tail up, there's a tail down here for the Kansas City Chiefs. So the offense will be interesting, and we'll see how it goes. And again, it could start completely fine, it could be completely fine, but there's always going to be some looming questions over the next 6 weeks until the season starts. And they got some tough opponents early on. You get the Chargers, who are a good defense for the most part. You get the Eagles week 2, Giants week 3. There are some good defensive lines early, and we'll figure that out pretty quickly. But defense time. Another group that's, I want to say, about average. It's not particularly great, but Steve Spagnuolo dials up some really good blitzes, some really fun stuff there, and it becomes a bend don't break. If you don't get those particular plays, 2nd and longs in the red zone, things like that, it's probably a worse defense. We're talking 21, 22, 23, but those plays save their drives all the time, and you see it all the time. And you see it in big moments. You see it late in drives and stuff like that. That's where you notice it. It's like, man, that was a nice blitz. Get the corner come off. You get the linebacker on a delayed blitz, all that kind of stuff. Anything that can get to the quarterback quick enough in those spots, you tend to see, and that's him drawing those plays up. As for the defense itself, there are some really good pieces here. Defensive line is okay for the most part. Chris Jones is really, really good. Probably the best pass rusher at defensive tackle in the league. The other defensive tackle spot, not as good. You get Tillery, they add. It's okay. Norman Lott in the draft. Mike Pennell, it's not particularly fantastic inside. next to Chris Jones. But as we said, Chris Jones is absolutely great, game wrecker, fantastic. On the edge, a little bit different. Karlaftis is okay. Again, nothing spectacular. 8.5 sacks-ish last year. That's probably where we're putting him now. Again, not a crazy great pass rusher, but having a decent pass rusher next to Chris Jones really, really helps. Mike Dana in there, Omenahu, Uzoma, like Karlaftis needs to have a good year. He just needs to have a good year. The rest of the ends are okay, rotational pieces that are going to have to play chunks. Our Karlaftis injury here is really devastating to the line, even though he, as I said, he's not some game breaker like Chris Jones is. But if you have Chris Jones, that's what we look like. An injury to Chris Jones, and this whole defense probably falls apart. The D-line in particular does. Linebacker, really good unit. Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal, Cam Jones, with some depth, Jack Cochran. Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal are a really good combo. They both do a variety of different things really, really well. It's a top 5 unit in the league. It's a very good unit, and not much more to say there. They just bought Nick Bolton back on a pretty big deal. But yeah, really good in run stop, good in pass defense as well. And again, they have guys they can rotate in and out at linebacker for a variety of different situations, and they all play off each other really, really well. Secondary, this is an interesting unit. We can start at safety. Brian Cook is pretty solid. Jaden Hicks is all right. Mike Edwards, they're all right. Again, you can kind of get away with not having great safeties, but it's a pretty solid room. Nothing crazy, as I said, but it's solid enough. And then corner is where things get interesting. They add Christian Fulton, who's a decent outside corner. He has his injury problems. Again, he's going to start I think he was today, they put out he was on the PUP to start, along with Juwan Jones and I forgot the other guy. But if he can stay healthy, it's a nice 2 to have. Jalen Watson's pretty solid at corner. And then it gets to Trent McDuffie, who you can do a whole bunch of fun stuff with. He's an excellent, excellent, excellent corner despite his size. And again, Christian Fulton, we talked about it. It's not like Christian Fulton's a world beater at corner, but having 2 guys on the outside who can kind of deal with their own, kind of just cover their own, lets you do whatever you want with McDuffie. You can bring him inside, take away dangerous slot guys. You can bring him outside, do all that fun stuff. And that's where the value comes in of having a couple of good guys on the outside. Like if Watson and Fulton can hold their own on the outside, and McDuffie can roam and do the important stuff every down, that's what you're really looking for. Josh Williams is there. He's okay. Noel Williams, they get in the draft. So a lot of this comes down to being able to hold your own so McDuffie can do what he needs to do, essentially, and erase whoever he needs to erase from the field. He's good enough to do that. But again, it all comes like they got to be good. Everyone else has to be like pretty good. And, Fulton, as we said, nothing spectacular. If he misses a good chunk of time, you get a little bit less of McDuffie in the slot. You get a little bit less of McDuffie where he needs to be, sort of stuff. He's playing on the outside where he's slightly less effective, all that stuff. So it's a really interesting group. And again, a lot of that will come down to the defensive line that we talk about all the time. If they can generate a pass rush, you don't have to leave Fulton, Watson on too many islands. So we'll see. It's an interesting team. I expect a lot of what we saw last year, a little bit of bend, not as much break with the coaching and the team itself. As for the offense, we have to see. We have to see with the offense. There are just questions with Rashee Rice, questions with the left side of the line. So let's jump on into the schedule and we can talk about some of those questions. Play the Chargers week 1, and that is in Brazil. Luck out a little bit there because this is the Chargers home game, which is nice. I know they don't have like a huge home field advantage or anything like that, but it's a true neutral here, obviously, as you're both in Brazil. Then you have a pretty tough game. You're home to Philadelphia in the home opener, but it's a pretty tough spot. You're coming back from Brazil. They're going to have more rest because they play on the Thursday when you play on the Friday. Obviously, last year, the defensive line gave Kansas City a boatload of problems. And then you got two guys on the left there. So they're going to figure out pretty quickly if these two guys can play. Simmons, Suamataia, and we'll figure out pretty quickly. We'll also figure out pretty quickly there's worlds where the Philadelphia defensive line steps back a little bit. And if you can't tell then you get the Giants the week after, who's a genuinely good D-line. You got Abdul Carter. They get number 2 in the draft, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. You're going to find out in the first 3 weeks if these dudes on the line can play and they're ready to play. Then you get Baltimore at home again, which is tough, at Jacksonville, Detroit at home, Las Vegas at home, who always play the Chiefs tough. It's just something Las Vegas does, and Las Vegas have gotten better. Then you get Washington at home and at Buffalo before the bye. So there are a lot of questions on this team, on the offense in particular, and it's not easy. It is not an easy start. You come out of the bye at Denver, home to the Colts, at Dallas, and then Houston at home, Chargers at home, at Tennessee, Denver at home, at Las Vegas. So it eases up quite a bit in the second half. And normally we have our future bets here, but I don't have any future bets for the Kansas City Chiefs. There's just too many questions. Too many questions on the offensive line. Too many tough opponents early. And then we got that suspension question with Rashee Rice. So my biggest thought here is maybe hope that the Chiefs fall flat early. If you're going to bet them, wait till the bye week after Buffalo, then buy at Denver. Like, that's where you get the Chiefs futures if you want any Chiefs futures there. Again, there are just so many questions, and I don't want to be on the wrong side. I don't want to be like, hey, we want like Chiefs over, we want Chiefs division, or anything like that, and they come out and left tackle's a turnstile and left guard's not playing particularly well and Rashee Rice has been suspended for 10 games, and like, you don't want any of that sort of stuff to happen. So I'm more comfortable just playing them game to game if you want to do that, or just going through the schedule there. And if you're going to play futures, wait until after the bye, catch them late when they're like 3, or you might get some good numbers if they come out. And they very well can do this. They go at the Chargers, home to Philly, at the Giants, home to Baltimore. If they're 1-3, which is very possible, and then they lose to Detroit and like split with Washington and Buffalo, we're talking about 3-5 type going into the bye. Then you're going to get some good numbers, probably 7, 8, 9-1 on them to win the AFC type stuff. So that's probably where you want to buy if it's going to happen. But we don't have any futures on the Chiefs because there's just a lot of questions on a tough schedule early on, guys. But that's the Kansas City Chiefs. That's our preview. And yeah.